Hey, welcome everybody. Again, if you want to put your name in the chat and where you're from in Montana, that would be great. Um, my name is Beth Ayers. I am from Montana's Peer Network. I am the um, peer support training coordinator. Montana's Network is a 501(c)(3) peer-led recovery organization that has been leading the recovery movement in Montana since 2011. We developed the family division in 2022 to take behavioral health, peer support, and all of the hard work that has been done around that and follow with family peer support. I have two adult children, both with behavioral health challenges, which is what brought me into this work. And my oldest actually used some of the services from vocational rehabilitation through the state. And so today we have the PREETS program. It stands for Pre-Employment Transition Services. It is PREETS are activities that provide an early start at job exploration for students with disabilities ages 14 through 21. This is an amazing program, and I'm excited for all of you guys to hear about it. Today we have presenter Andrew Lowney. He is a pre-ed specialist in the Missoula region, and he is going to share with us all about pre-eds. Thanks for being here, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've got a PowerPoint here. I'm just looking at getting it to share, and then I'll give a quick introduction. I just realized that I did not include one of our student request forms on there, so I just went and made a quick edit. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it messed with anything, so I think we're good. Let's see. Can everyone see that on the screen?
Yep.
Okay, so my name is Andrew Lowney. I'm the pre-employment transition specialist for the Missoula region. I've been with Voc Rehab since June of 2015. I was the first pre-ed specialist hired in the state of Montana, and was part of the team that helped put together the pre-eds bureau, and came up with kind of the job description and duties. I started as a general Voc Rehab counselor working with adults and students. When I first started, before pre-eds was a thing, everyone just kind of did everything. And so when I first started, I had about 150 cases on my caseload, and I was assigned to, typically each counselor is assigned to one or two high schools if they're bigger high schools, plus then they serve adults. And so at the time, we had some budget issues and we had some hiring freezes and some vacancy savings. And so as people would leave, I would just absorb their schools because I really enjoyed working with schools and students. And it got to the point where I had about 150 adult cases and 12 high schools that I was assigned to. And it was very clear that with the provision of WIOA and the push for pre-employment transition services, we really weren't able to do a good job of serving our students, because there just wasn't time. When the majority of my caseload was adults, but then I was assigned to all of these schools, I just didn't have enough time to really work with students as well and give them the time they need. And so that's kind of what, through that and other planning, we created the Pre-Eds Bureau. And what that has led to now is that we have three distinct bureaus. So we have our General Voc Rehab Bureau, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. That's for anyone 14 and above. There's no age limit. I, at one point, had a student that was 14, and I had an adult who was 82 on my caseload. So there's no age restriction beyond 14 for our Voc Rehab adult program. We have our pre-eds program, and then we have our blind and low vision program, and I'll touch on that a little bit today as well. So yeah, so that's kind of where it started and kind of how I got into this role. So as I said, we have the three different bureaus. So our general Voc Rehab A lot of times you'll hear people call it our adult program or adult services program, but in reality, students can do voc rehab as well. Typically, we see most students wait until closer to senior year to apply for voc rehab because we have our pre-ets program now that can start as early as freshman year. There's also all sorts of other processes that are involved, like doing eligibility for voc rehab, which entails gathering records and things like that, but also the adult voc rehab part of the program also has a financial eligibility component. And so there are some services that individuals are not eligible for based on their resources and income. And so you can imagine if they're a student and they're under 18 and they're based on their parents' income, oftentimes that puts them over the limit. So there's not a whole lot of benefit sometimes for students being in a voc rehab plan when they can receive the pre-ets program regardless of income and all that stuff. So we have our general voc rehab that most students start in their senior year, and our counselors are in the schools taking applications in most of the high schools around the state. We have our pre-ets program, and that is specific to students 14 to 21. And then we have our blind and low vision services program. And that is for any individual with disability that's classified as blindness or significant visual impairment. So I'll start with our general voc rehab because this is relevant. There are to students as well. Like I said, not all students start with this program until they get to senior year, but there are occasions where somebody will apply earlier. I see that way more commonly in our homeless population. So some of our students that are really low income and really low resources, because they would then qualify for those cost services. We have had a huge push from the governor's office to involve foster care youth, and it's been a big goal of our program to get more foster care youth involved. All of those students would also qualify for the full voc rehab services. But generally speaking, students or senior year will apply. It's a process where they'll gather. So they apply for the program. The counselor meets with the student and the parent or guardian. They gather documentation like records of eligibility based on their disability. So it could be medical records, could be psychological records, an IEP, a 504. But we gather those records and then we determine eligibility, and we have 3 different priority levels. One is our most significant. So those are individuals that have the most significant impact of disability. Priority 2 is kind of in the middle. There's an impact, but it's not so significant that the individual is not likely going to need long-term support. And then priority 3 is our lower category. It's hard to necessarily say a specific disability that falls within, but I would say priority 3 could be somebody with, let's say, diabetes that's very well managed, but maybe they need to take breaks during the day to check their blood sugar, or somebody with ADHD that's very well managed. It still impacts them, but it doesn't impact them as somebody who might be in our priority 2 and 1. And so basically eligibility is done for voc rehab. The client is then placed in one of the 3 categories depending on their disability. They meet with the counselor and they write what's called a plan for employment. And that's where we work with the client to develop a specific work goal and then what services are needed for that goal. And so again, as another reason why students typically wait until they're 18 or older is because those additional services don't really apply till after high school. One of the more popular services that is available is we can help with things like training costs, like tuition and books for school, tools, trade schools, those types of things. And so typically the student has to be out of high school to qualify for those with either the diploma or high set. But we could also do career services as well. And then they meet with the counselor every 90 days to check progress towards their goal. And as long as they're meeting and following through and meeting the responsibilities in their plan, their case remains open until they are successfully employed in the job. So it could be 6 months, it could be 12 years. It really just depends on that individual's goal and what services are needed. The overall goal is that that person will be successfully employed and exited from our program with a successful outcome, meaning that they are employed. We know what level of support they need. Either they need ongoing support or they don't, but they're essentially employed and they're doing well in the job and they've passed the probationary period. And so to qualify for voc rehab, people who apply have to have a physical or mental disability. It could be cognitive, it could be mental health related, it could be physical. And the disability has to prevent that person from independently getting or keeping a job or causing impediments to employment. And the individual needs to want to work. So that's a big component of it. We have had people that are confused in the past. Some of the correctional agencies pass around information and letters that aren't always accurate. So we have had people that have come in and they thought that our program was just strictly to buy things like bikes and sleeping bags and tents and things like that with no intent to work. In that case, that person would not be eligible. So the key component is having a disability that causes an impediment to employment, but also the individual wants to work and gain employment. And these are just some of the general services through Voc Rehab. Evaluation services can happen. So let's say a client comes in, they're 24 years old, they haven't been in school for quite a while, they don't know if they had an IEP or a 504 while they're in high school. We can refer them to have an evaluation done to see if there is a diagnosis of a disability in order to determine eligibility. We also provide career counseling and guidance. That's our core service, and information and referral. So connecting with outside resources and programs. That's another huge benefit to our program, is that we are very well connected with our communities. And we have a lot of resources and people that we can connect with, whether it's housing, whether it's developmental disability program, Disability Rights Montana, Montana Empowerment Center, Independent Living Center. So we connect people with various agencies and we can help kind of figure out what additional supports may be needed. Training, and that can involve college, it can involve a trade school, apprenticeship, really whatever that person's goal is and what is needed. Some individuals don't want to go on to school or do extra training after high school, and we can do job placement and development. So meeting with an employment specialist to help develop a resume, help know how to look for and apply for jobs, and then how to prepare for an interview. And then when in a job, provide some extra support if it's needed. Voc Rehab could also help with things like self-employment, some maintenance services, business services. So we work with a lot of businesses too to educate them on accommodations, disability, that kind of stuff. And so Voc Rehab, the agency itself is made up of 9 different field offices. Billings, Bozeman, Butte, Great Falls, Havre, Helena, Kalispell, Miles City, and Missoula. So every area of the state is reached. Even if somebody's in a community that doesn't fall within one of those specific areas, we serve all the outlying areas. So Missoula, for example, that's where I'm based out of. I serve Missoula, Ravalli, and Mineral County. So I serve every school all the way out to Darby, all the way up to St. Regis and Mineral County, and then I go out to our Lee. And that's how all of our offices are designated. So the Billings office has a wide sweeping area out there, and will serve anybody within their region. There's counselor supervisors in each office. So there's 1 counselor supervisor per office. And then each office has, depending on the size and number of clients they're serving, they have several counselors that just work with Voc Rehab clients. So on the adult side, we do have rehabilitation technicians as well that do take applications in some of the high schools and with adults in the office. So they would do the application, help gather records, and then the counselor would be assigned to do eligibility. And then right now, our vocational rehab counselors are very busy. They're very, they have very large caseloads. I would say the average caseload is around 120 to 130, with some caseloads up to 150. And then blind and low vision, these are the different parts of the blind and low vision program. The part that makes the most sense for the presentation today and that kind of ties more into PREETs is our blind and low vision Voc Rehab program. So basically, all of the things that I discussed for Voc Rehab are also available for individuals that meet the blind and low vision qualification. The main difference is that we have a specialized counselor in each region. So in our region, we have Julie, who is the counselor supervisor and counselor. So she would take any referral for any individual whose primary disability is visual related. And that includes high school students. So she can work with high school students as early as 14, their freshman year, and can work with them on things like whether it needs to be, like white cane training, some orientation and mobility related to work. She's worked with businesses to help bring in things like Braille menus and just other things like that. So the blind and low vision program works closely with our high schools and with our PREET specialists. and they generally will take the lead. I would work alongside Julie and I would help provide some consultation, but Julie would take the lead because she's the expert on the visual impairments. And so each supervisor has on the blind and low vision side has a vision rehab therapist that they supervise, and they help provide different assessments for individuals' needs. So they might help figure out what equipment is needed at home in a work setting. They can come in and test equipment, and then we have an orientation and mobility specialist assigned to each of those regions as well. And I've used them quite often with helping do bus training for some of my students to learn just how to ride our public transportation here. And so PREETS this is the bulk of what we're going to talk about today. PREETS is the bureau that I'm part of. PREETS is for students age 14 to 21. Students can be in high school working towards their high set. They could be in a homeschool program. They could be in college, a trade school. Essentially, it just has to be a program that is working towards some sort of an attainment. So a student can't be homeschooled but not like doing anything. Like they can't just say, I'm doing school and they're not making any progress towards anything. They have to be trying to make progress towards an end goal, whether it's a diploma, a high set, a certificate. But it's meant to give students with disabilities an introduction to work, assist with transitioning from school to post-secondary education or employment. And then we can also provide activities for an early start for job exploration. And our PREETS is split into 5 main core services: job exploration counseling, work-based learning experiences, counseling on post-secondary programs, workplace readiness training, and introduction and self-advocacy. And this is the extra slide I added. So it looks like it did save, which is good, but I realized I didn't have it in here until we started, but this is for you may remember me mentioning for the voc rehab part, there's definitely a bit more of a process where we do an intake, we gather records, we do eligibility. For PREETS, this is it. This is all that somebody has to complete to be eligible for PREETS. It's our student request form. So it's just the demographic information, indication of, if the student has an IEP or a 504, and if they don't, but they have a disability, that box would be checked. Primary disability needs to be filled out on here, the school, the grade level, when they think they're going to graduate. And then if they have an IEP or a 504, it's much more simplified because we don't even need records at that point. We just have a school staff person. We usually have kind of our go-to person in each school that we work with and knows our program. So we would just have that staff person in the school look up the student and verify that they have an IEP or a 504. And then the staff person signs this form verifying that they meet the criteria. If they don't have an IEP or 504, that's fine. We would just need to see a copy of some sort of a record that demonstrates that they have a disability, and then we would just complete the form without school staff. So this form right here is what we provide to all of the schools. And if any parent reaches out or student, we would connect them, and this would be the first process. They would just complete this form. And then once this form has been verified, they're eligible to start receiving PREETS services. So the first category is job exploration counseling. This typically is what we usually will start most freshmen out with, not to say that sophomores, juniors, and seniors don't benefit, but this is generally going to be activities that are more like the very basic beginning phase of learning about employment. And so there's a lot of different ways that this can be done. Mostly what we're finding schools will utilize and what we do are different interest assessments and inventories. A lot of high school students don't really know what they want to do because they don't even know what's out there. Especially in rural communities, there's not a whole lot for them to see or to go explore. And so we like to start with interest assessments just to see like, okay, based on your assessment, here are some careers that might fit your interests. Maybe they don't, but let's start exploring those careers first because these assessments have indicated that you might have an interest in that area. The picture that's on here for Pathful, Virtual Job Shadow, the state of Montana has a contract with them. Or a subscription with them. And so any of the clients that apply for our program or PREETS can get an account set up through Pathful. And this is a great resource, especially for some of the students in the rural areas that may not be able to explore in-person careers. It has hundreds of different career videos that are anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes long of just about every career you can think of. And so I like to start with this a lot of times with freshmen. I'll go into classrooms as well and do kind of a lesson on this and help get students signed up. But it's a great visual and a great way for students to just see what's out there and see what interests them. And then from there, maybe they say, I really want to be a welder, based on these videos, that seems really interesting. Then the next goal would be to get them out in the community exploring that through a job shadow or an informational interview. So again, job exploration is generally our starting point, just to kind of see what students are interested in and what they want to do. We're a very client-driven program. Our role is not to tell a student what they're good at and what they're going to do and what they should do. We help them explore their interests and figure out what they want to do, and then we give them the resources to explore that further and to decide if that is what they want to do or not. Work-based learning, this is probably our most popular service and the most highly sought after service that we provide through the school contracts, but also we have different providers in the community, and then our pre-ed specialists will do this. Most students I work with really want to do this because it's giving them that ability to get out, try some hands-on different things. We can do paid work experiences as well, where Voc Rehab covers the wage and the workers' comp for a set amount of hours in a position that the student's interested in. So it gives them a chance to gain some work experience and to see if it's a job that they want. But it also gives us a lot that we can learn from, like, how many hours per day is that student comfortable working? How many hours per week? How many days in a row? Does the student do really well with certain tasks, but not with others? And so it gives us a way to kind of evaluate some of the skills and abilities of the student to also help guide them towards exploring other careers as well. So work-based learning can be just job shadows as well. So if a student just wants to go out and shadow, see what a job is like, we can help with that. We do a lot of informational interviews as well, and that fits into work-based learning. And essentially an informational interview is we would connect with an expert in a specific field. I'm always very upfront with students. I do this for a living. I know a lot about careers. I'm a career counselor, but I haven't done every job. And so why would I sit there and tell them what an architect does when I've never done it? Instead, let's connect you with an architect so you can meet with them and hear from the expert in the field and truly know what they do. What is the typical pay? What kind of training is required? What do they like and don't like? So those are very powerful, the informational interviews, and we try to do that as often as we can. I would say the paid work experiences, we generally have been trying to prioritize juniors and seniors. We don't have a lot of providers statewide to be able to set up work experiences. And generally speaking, most juniors and seniors are old enough to where they can do just about any job, where students that are freshmen and sophomores might still have some restrictions. So we try to make sure that when we have providers available, we're prioritizing juniors and seniors to refer first so that they get these opportunities before they graduate. And then the counseling on post-secondary, it can be college, it can be trade school, it can be apprenticeships. It's really just any training beyond high school. We can help counsel on, so either explain what the process is, how to apply, what is financial aid, how to apply for that. We can coordinate tours of the different programs. I do a lot with students that are interested in going to college. I go to a lot of IEP meetings, especially junior year. I'm a big advocate for getting students connected with the disability service programs at the universities as early as possible. Most universities, as all of the public universities have one, but basically the disability service programs are almost like an IEP or 504 coordinator in a high school. Essentially, they are there to help determine what accommodations that student could qualify for in college and help them with the steps to be able to do that. So I will often connect juniors with disability student services if they've identified that they want to go to college, mostly because the supports in high school and college are completely different. Colleges will allow accommodations, but they do not allow modifications. And that's really important for students to understand. Like, if say in high school, they're able to retake a test if they get a certain grade, only do odd numbered questions, that doesn't happen in college. And so I like to try to get students aware of that and connect as early as possible and then challenge them that their senior year, let's go in and try to only use the accommodations you know you're going to get in college and see how you do. So that's a big part of the post-secondary. Again, connecting with schools, researching programs, knowing how to apply, knowing what the next steps are going to be like, and just helping students be more prepared so that they're not entering college thinking that it's going to be exactly like high school. Workplace readiness training, this is going to be anything related to soft skills training. So maybe we're working with some students, and freshmen and sophomores in particular benefit from this greatly, because a lot of them don't really know what soft skills are required in a job. You know, how do you communicate with your supervisor or your coworkers? How should you be dressing when you go to an interview or you go to pick up an application? What should our hygiene be like? What should we wear? How do you communicate in an interview? What are some of those appropriate soft skills? So workplace readiness training kind of focuses on all of that. And then introduction and self-advocacy. This is going to be anything related to, you know, I would say, oh, probably 90 or more percent of the students I meet with that have IEPs, we sit down in the meeting and they're applying for voc rehab or pre-ETs, and we ask them what their disability is, and 90% of them say they don't have one. Or they don't know. And so usually we'll approach it, you know, do you have an IEP in school? A lot of students have no idea. Some don't even attend their IEPs. Some do, but they don't really know what it is. So a lot of this advocacy part is helping students understand that, like, there is that stigma around disability. So a lot of it is students don't want to be labeled, but it's also identifying that, yes, you do have a disability. It doesn't have to define you. You're not your disability, but you do benefit by knowing more about it. So how can you ask for accommodations or advocate for yourself if you don't even know you have a disability and what accommodations you qualify for? So this intro and self-advocacy focuses a lot on that, helping students understand what is a disability, what is your disability, how does it affect you, what can you qualify for in terms of accommodations, how do you advocate for those, who are the right resources to contact. So that's what self-advocacy generally focuses on, is just that disability education piece. And so these are the different ways that pre-ETs are delivered. Services can be purchased from a pre-ETs provider. So we have different, what we call community rehab providers in our areas around the state. There's not a lot that are doing pre-ET services. Most are focusing on working with adults because they have so many adult referrals that they're pretty full with that. But when we do have providers that are willing to take referrals, it's great because we can send, let's say I have a student who wants to do a work experience as a daycare worker. I can refer them to the provider, and the provider will reach out to any of the daycares in the area and work with them to set up a paid work experience or a job shadow, and then we'll be able to check in with the student and monitor and see how they're doing. And so that's generally the main service we refer out to our providers, is helping set up those individual work experiences outside of school. The majority of our funding, a big chunk of it, is through school contracts. Montana is unique in that we have decided to offer contracts each year to every school in the state. Not every school does one. Currently, there's 116 high schools in Montana that have contract with us. And the benefit of that is that with Montana being as large as it is, and with how large of an area we each serve, it's not practical for me, for example, to go to Darby every day or every week and provide services to every student in the school myself. So instead, any of the schools that are interested, they can apply for a contract each year. They put together a plan to show us how they're going to provide the pre-ET services. And then once we've approved and signed off on that, they start gathering those pre-ET student request forms, and they can then bill for any of the students that have completed a student request form and that are receiving pre-ET services in the school. Schools can receive a maximum of $18,000 per quarter per school. Generally, the bigger schools are hitting that mark. The smaller schools, it's more difficult, but we have adjusted the rates to where smaller schools get a higher rate per service. And I have some, like even Florence High School's a B school, they just billed $13,000 this last quarter. And so it's a significant amount of money that schools can use to either hire more staff to provide pre-ET services, or they can purchase curriculum. Some of our schools have purchased different interest assessments, virtual job shadow, different things like that. And so it's a huge benefit. And it's really been a very good way of us reaching way more students than we'd be able to do if we didn't contract with the schools. And then we also have service providers provided by our pre-ed specialists, such as myself. So I'll go into schools and I'll help run things like a job club. I'll set up work experiences for students in my area, or job shadows or informational interviews. I go to most of my AA schools, I'm there every week. My single A schools usually at least once a month, and my BC schools at least once a month to 3 months. And I'll go in and help with whatever's needed. So if they want me to teach a lesson on interview prep, I'll do that. I can do resume writing, really whatever the school needs. Recently, I connected one of my schools with our credit union here to teach financial literacy, how to open a bank account, all that kind of stuff. So each of our pre-ed specialists is equipped and trained to be able to provide all of our 5 pre-ed services directly to students and schools. And then we also have specialized programs. And those are things like the Montana Youth Leadership Forum that happens in Helena every year, a really great camp, great way for students to learn advocacy and just kind of being on their own for a week. The Montana Youth Transition Conference occurs every year. That's a great conference. If you haven't attended, I'd recommend it. There's a ton of great service providers and keynote speakers and just resources out there to be able to connect with. Students are eligible to go, parents can go, service providers. It's just a great resource. MSU Buildings still runs a Moving On in Montana, and it's kind of like a 2 to 3 day camp to give students an opportunity to see what college life is like. So they get to stay on campus, learn about the different classes. Sometimes they can audit a class. So it's just really a way to like get that inside information on what college is like before choosing to go. And then Starbase, there's some STEM career camps as well at the military bases. Helena and Great Falls. One of them this year is not doing it. I can't remember which one, but students are eligible to participate in those camps through our pre-eds program. And then Bloom Consulting runs several different, what they call on the right track rural pre-eds camps. So they focus on areas like Lewistown. This year they put one together at Salish Kootenai College to focus on more of the tribal areas over there, like Polson, Ronan, Arlee. And so we also support career-related competitions as well. So students that are in a Voc Rehab plan and pre-eds, we can help pay for some of the costs for like DECA nationals, FFA nationals, speech and debate nationals. So any of those career-related competitions that are relevant to pre-eds, we can assist with. And then I mentioned a little bit earlier, but one of our big goals was increasing participation for foster care youth. And so I just wanted to bring this in and just demonstrate kind of what that looks like now in our state. So the goal from the governor's office was to increase the participation by 50% of students participating in pre-eds. And as a whole for our state, we increased by 109%, which was a really big accomplishment and a good success, and it is very much needed. And through that, we've developed better relationships with Child Family Services, but also the Chafee programs, the group homes. And so that's something we're going to continue to work on, is continuing to work with foster care youth and finding ways to better support that population. Working here as long as I have, I've definitely seen a big difference when we can get foster care youth involved as early as possible, as early as freshman year, to be able to develop that relationship and build that rapport. A lot of times these students are connected with so many different providers and people, and it's hard for them to keep track of who is who. And I've found that if we don't start till junior or senior year and we haven't developed a relationship, and that student ages out and they either go back with their biological parents or they go off on their own, if we haven't developed that relationship, it's hard for us to keep in touch with them and keep services going after high school. So it's been huge to connect as early as possible. And I think it's going to be really beneficial to continue. And I included a success story. This is one that's just a success, kind of highlighting what pre-eds can do, but also includes a foster care youth as well. So it kind of just highlights the reason why these services are so important and what they can do when students truly utilize our services. It's pretty lengthy, but this was a story too that was submitted by Child Family Services, and the student won an award just recently. It was presented on it because it was a really great success for her. But This is a particular student that I was working with. She met with me through her high school early on in school. I came and gave a presentation in her classroom, explained pre-ets. She was really interested in it. Frenchtown High School, through our program, funds what they call a summer camp, a pre-ed summer camp as well, where they have some staff that stay a few weeks into the summer break, and the staff is all funded through pre-eds, and they get students out in the community, job shadowing, visiting businesses, things like that. So this particular student joined the summer camp a couple of years ago. We did a job shadow with the dog groomer, went really well. She really liked that person. We then made a connection with the dog groomer to host her to do a paid work experience. That went really well. Generally, our work experiences are just 40 hours because it's a way to kind of see what the student likes, if it's a good fit, if it's not. It went really well, and the business owner was willing to host her as more of like an internship or apprenticeship type of program. And so we were able to approve additional hours. We were able to purchase some tools for her to be able to work on the grooming as well. The owner was willing to teach her how to do all of the business side of things as well, for if she eventually wanted to start her own business. So she learned bookkeeping, how to do appointments, how to actually groom. It went really well. She did great there. They loved her there. She was also interested in vet sciences, but ultimately through that experience and looking at other things, she decided she wanted to explore other employment as well. And that's one key component of our program, is we always emphasize to students that it's okay to change your mind. I recommend students have multiple areas of interest to explore. And so although everything was all in on animal care, we didn't close the door for other things. And she reached out and said, I've been hearing more about OBGYN work and working with kids. Can we explore that? I was able to set her up with an informational interview with a labor and delivery nurse, and she loved it. She really liked that kind of work and decided that that's the route she wants to go now. So we ended things on the animal care grooming side, and we've shifted now towards the medical field. She just graduated last week. She and I are going to meet this week to put together a plan for her to start CNA training. For some reason, it always auto spell checks and switches it to CAN. So if you see CAN on here, it's actually CNA. But that's kind of where we're starting at now. She's going to explore CNA training, try to work in that field for a while. If she likes it, we'll look at nursing, with the ultimate goal of her working as a labor and delivery nurse, if that's what she wants to do. And so I shared this again as a success to show every student is eligible to participate in our services in the same way. They have the ability. We have these services available, whether it's provided by myself or another pre-ed specialist or one of our providers. These are things that our students can participate in through pre-eds. And then again, it also just shows the importance of connecting youth, especially in the foster care system, because since we've been working together for 2 to 3 years now, she's very comfortable with me. We're still in contact. She's going to stay in contact with me after high school. And I think she's going to be much more successful because of that, because she knows us, she knows what supports we can provide, and we're here as an additional resource. And then this is our pre-eds team. And so we have a pre-ed specialist in each region. Mine's the orange circle. I'm the Missoula region. And you'll see too, some of these areas are smaller than others. It's because of the population density. So in my area, I have fewer area to travel and fewer schools, but I have bigger schools generally, or more students that are getting referred. Then we have the Kalispell region. She serves that whole area. Helen and Butte is combined into one. So Vina serves that area. Kyla has the Bozeman area. Lona has Billings area. Katie serves the Great Falls area. Rebecca has Havre Highlines area, and then Belinda has the Miles City area. And so again, every part of the state is served. If you have somebody you're looking to refer and you're not sure who they'd work with, you could reach out to myself or Tammy. Tammy is our bureau chief. She's out this week, and so that's why I'm presenting today in place of Tammy, but she's our bureau chief. She's been with pre-eds from day one. She helped start the program. So if you're ever not sure or you have any pre-eds related questions, she's a wealth of information. And then Mimi Guernsey is our data technician. And so she manages all of those pre-eds forms. We send them to her and she gets them created in our system as a case. She also manages payments to all of the schools for the school contract services and to our providers. So she serves every area. but she doesn't do direct services. So if you're looking to refer, you wouldn't go to Mimi, you would contact whichever person is in the area, or if you're not sure, you can contact Tammy or myself. And this is a contact information for everybody. I can share the PowerPoint after as well, you know, for you guys to have this, but each of us has an email address and typically a landline and a work cell as well. So we're pretty flexible with whatever communication works best. I find that most students don't want to talk on the phone. And so most students just text me on my work cell that's on there. Most schools do as well. So it's, we're pretty flexible. So I threw a ton of information at you guys. I know we had an hour and there's a lot of slides, so I wanted to get through all of them, but also have time for questions. Like I said, it was definitely a lot to take in all at once. So at this point, if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer anything you guys have.
Thank you, Andrew. Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Okay. Hey, Teresa.
Andrew, thank you for being here and talking about this topic. I have how, I guess I'm trying to understand how the work that you guys do can help children that have more extreme behaviors to be able to get them to learn the skills they need to learn for being able to work and practice skills and work settings and things like that.
Yeah, so we work, it's a team effort in those cases. But we work with any and all disabilities. Most of our staff have been trained or have learned, have participated in some training around discovery as well. So sometimes students that have more significant needs that are going to need more of like a customized approach and less of a traditional approach. Generally myself included would take more of a customized approach towards employment. And so rather than if a student has some extreme behavioral problems or significant cognitive deficits that would be difficult to participate in an interview or complete an application, we're generally a little more creative in terms of working with employers to try to carve out a position that would fit that person's skills, abilities, and interests. So not just as a favor, like, hey, business, we want you to go out to the news and say, look at this great deed you're doing. You're hiring somebody with a disability. We don't ever take that approach. It would be more of this individual has these specific skills. Maybe they can't do every single aspect of the job, but I know they can do these tasks very well. We would work with an employer to try to carve out a job that would allow them to complete those tasks that we know they would be successful in. Students that have higher needs, we would refer to our providers that can provide job coaching. And so typically they would have a job coach on site with them that is trained to work with different behaviors and different abilities and skills. We also work closely with the schools. So I am in contact often with the OTs, the physical therapists, the school psychs. If they have outside OT providers, I'm in contact with them often. So we kind of work as a team to figure out, okay, let's try a job, you know, and I'm in the schools quite often. So maybe we have a student that has some behaviors that might be problematic in an outside work setting. Let's try a job at school. You know, let's set up a job at school and let's see and have them perform these tasks similar to what they would do in a job in the community while they're in a setting that they're familiar with. And then let's work on trying that out in the community. So we kind of take a multi-team faceted approach with that. But our goal is ultimately to give everybody the opportunity to try. So we're never going to tell anybody, sorry, your disability is too significant, you cannot work. We give them the opportunity to try it. If them and their parent and their caregiver ultimately decide it's not what they want to do, that's fine. They can decide that. But we approach every case with the assumption that everybody can work and can contribute to the workforce in some way, whether it's an hour a week, 40 hours a week. It's up to each individual. I don't know if that answered your question well. Do you have a specific example or like something that you were leaning more towards? I think you're muted.
You're on mute.
Oops, I'm on. Sorry. I said I do, but it would require a private conversation.
Okay, and I'm happy to talk with you about that at any time. But yeah, I mean, we've had some that we've approached it, we've given the opportunity, and parents have ultimately decided they're not gonna pursue it, and that's okay. But yeah, we try our best to find and work with people to explore their interests and have an opportunity to work.
That's exciting. I'm hoping. I have hope.
Yeah, I mean, and then
Because
the unfortunate reality though is like everywhere, staffing. I mean, that's the biggest issue at schools statewide. There's a huge shortage of staff in general. I would say with half of my schools, I'm getting a new principal or superintendent or teacher every year. And we're starting from scratch and educating them on what pre-ets is and how to do referrals and how to do the contract and all of that. Same with providers, if we don't have a ton of providers here either. So that's usually the general hangup we're finding, is that if somebody does need a lot of support, it's finding a provider that can provide that support and then having enough hours. So that's the tricky part, is like, yes, we do have that ability with some limitations due to staffing from time to time, but
Okay.
Thanks, Teresa. I guess my question is, how do people hear about your services if the school that their child is at doesn't have a contract with you guys?
that's a good question. We go to, regardless of the schools having contract with us or not, we're still in contact with them. So
Okay.
the main difference that it is, if a school doesn't have a contract, they don't submit quarterly reports. We don't provide funding to the school, but I have schools that don't do a contract, but they still refer because they want their students connected. They just don't feel like they have the capacity to go through all of these steps. So Arlie, for example, they don't have a contract with us. We try to set up at least a quarterly meeting to meet with whoever the people are that the school designates. So I usually reach out to everybody that would be relevant, the school counselors, the principal, the assistant principal, the superintendent, the special education teacher. So anybody who would have any access to students with a disability. And I set up a meeting if we haven't met with them before, and we talk through our program. I bring out resources like our rack cards. We have a generic letter that schools can send out to anybody with an IEP or 504 or any disability that just says, hey, because your son or daughter has an IEP or 504, these are some great services you qualify for. Call Andrew, it has my contact info. So that's one way, is we're in the schools, we're meeting with them. I offer to attend IEPs. So if we do have a parent that the student or the teacher talks to, they can invite me to the IEP to share a little more information. And so we do, whether they have a contract or not, we go out and we try to share as much information as we can. We will host, sometimes schools will even bring us out to do like parent nights, at the school. We've also done like service provider career fairs. Like I've gone to schools and brought myself and some of our providers and like job service and people like that, and parents and students have been able to come around and learn about it. We have our website. Our public relations person is working on, I don't know why it's so difficult, but there's so many steps to getting approval for social media. It's been like a year and they're not through that hurdle yet. At some point, hopefully while social media still exists, we will have the opportunity as well. But our goal is to have all of those main social media apps to get our information out there. This last year, we also, myself and one of our other counselors co-led the Disability Mentoring Week, which is a huge initiative. In October, during Disability Mentoring Week, we connected schools, students, businesses all around the state with opportunities for job shadows, work experiences, informational interviews. And we created a survey for that we sent out, like blasted it out everywhere. Our business partners, like the independent living centers and places like that, sent it to everybody. So that was a big success. I would bet we had at least 50 to 100 students or parents that reached out that we had never met before. They didn't even know we existed, but they learned about it that way. So we do our best to get the information out to schools. Unfortunately, it doesn't always go from there. And so we rely a lot on you guys, like people that are involved and that are interested and that want to connect people to share our information as well. And yeah, really from there, we're willing to meet with anybody and talk to them, but we put it out there, and unfortunately there are still large amounts of people that still have no idea that we exist.
I think that's always the case. I do want to say that my experience as a family peer supporter with the PREATS specialist up in the Havre part, Havre area. Um, yeah, I guess I just want to share that I think the PREAT specialists that work with the students have such a vested interest in each of them. The specialist up in the Havre area has connected many families to family peer support. So not only are you guys helping the students with what they need, but you also, any other needs, I feel like you guys really care about the whole family and that you connect them. And so I've really been impressed with just, yeah, your specific programs, services, but just to the involvement and the support that you guys give families. So
I'm
thank
glad to
you a
hear
lot.
that that's been, yeah, been positive. We do have benefits planning as well that we can connect people with. So we do try to help with that whole part. If somebody has Social Security or they're looking for housing, we could try to connect with resources. Developmental disability program, I try to help refer and connect people as early as possible. So yeah, that's a huge component of our program, is that networking and connecting and
Mhm.
helping the student, obviously, but the family as a whole. So
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys. Do we have any questions? We're almost at the top of the hour. Okay, well, Andrew, thank you so much for being here. That was a wealth of information. Like I said, I just can't speak highly enough about the program, and just all the services that you guys provide. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. July, we will not have Family First Wednesday. It falls close to the 4th. And then August, we have Eagle Mount coming to talk to us. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Again, thank you, Andrew. And we will see you all next month. Have a good rest of the day.